Hey everybody, and welcome to a live stream of the Ask a Cycling Coach podcast on YouTube and Facebook. Thanks for joining us. If you are joining us on one of those platforms, you can interact with us live. Just throw in your questions down below. You can like and share this video, and that will help your friends see it, or you can just directly share it with them to help them see it. Bring them along, those cyclists and triathletes that you know, if you want them to get answers to their cycling and triathlon related questions. We're going to cover a bunch of different items today, a special announcement, which we'll save until we actually start the proper podcast, and a handful of other things. So it's going to be a fun episode.
And live viewers, if I am too loud, comment while I'm talking, and our producer Ian will adjust my mic live.
Yep. If he's too loud or too quiet, basically listen to Nate relative to the rest of us, and we'll be able to dial it in.
Like always. Pay special attention.
With that, I think we're ready for the proper podcast. Welcome to the podcast. It's dedicated to making you a faster cyclist, the Ask a Cycling Coach podcast presented by Trainer Road. I'm Coach Jonathan Lee with our head coach, Chad Timmerman.
Hi, everybody.
Our CEO, Nate Pearson.
Hey.
This is where we answer more of your cycling and triathlon related questions that you submit at trainerroad.com/podcast, or in the different areas where you can find us on the internet. We have an Ask a Cycling Coach podcast Facebook group. We have something interesting coming up that we'll also announce along those lines coming soon. This is basically the spot where you can get all those questions answered. One quick announcement that we have for this podcast is next week is Interbike here in Reno this time. We don't have to go to Vegas. I think we're all kind of silently or perhaps even vocally cheering
Very
yes for that.
Well, yeah. Reno's better than Vegas. Everyone knows that.
That's for darn sure. For those that don't know, it's quite a long ways away. We're much closer to Lake Tahoe in Northern California.
We're farther west than L.A. That always blows people's mind.
Yeah.
I just blew Chad's mind.
So we're going to be here, which will be nice, which also means that our office is here, which means that we should have a live podcast recording party with all of you who are listening to this. You can join us live in person if you're going to be in the region. Plenty of industry folks will be there. If you know somebody going, please let them know about this, and we'll have a post later in our Facebook podcast group about this. But also, if you are just going to join from afar, you'll be able to join us on a live stream. It'll be later in the evening. If you're in the region, come to our office, which you'll be able to find that once again in the Facebook podcast group at 6:30 p.m. So the show ends at 6 that day, the Interbike trade show. So you'll just be able to roll right over. We'll have dinner and snacks and everything else and drinks for all of you.
And today is September 13th, 2018.
Yes, exactly.
Someone
right.
asked us to start saying dates.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. I should have stated that. So, and then the podcast itself starts at 7:30, and this is going to be going on next Tuesday, and that's September 18th. So, podcast starts at 7:30. We're going to have a special guest. We haven't gotten confirmation yet. We've been working on a ton of different guests for this one, and it's been tricky to line some up. So, but hopefully we have one nailed down. I think it's going to be a great one. We'll be able to announce that as soon as that's actually official. So, but once again, come over to Trainer Road HQ at 6:30. Podcast starts at 7:30. If you're joining live from afar, then it'll be 7:30 p.m. Pacific. So late for some of you on the East Coast, and especially late and or early if you're across the pond over in Europe. But we're excited for it. It's going to be a good time. Last one was fun with Cody Kaiser and Courtney McFadden. And they'll be even here racing as well. You're racing Cross Reno, right?
Yep. Reno Cross,
forgive me. All three of us are racing the Wheelers and Dealers race, but you're doing...
I'm not sure I'd call it racing, but yeah, I'll be there.
Yeah. Chad and I are going to pedal hard for a bit, and hopefully it goes...
See how long that lasts.
Yeah.
35 plus 4.5. I'm like 2 points away from upgrading, I think, to a 3 or something
close.
like that.
You'll get him on this one then, I'm sure.
Maybe. It depends on how my other fields were submitted. I don't know, but I'm close.
This course seems like it'll favor you. It's like if you took
Strongman's course?
Yeah, actually. Yeah. Big power course. Yeah. Like it's not like last year when they had cross nationals in this region, had that really technical section. There's none of that. This is it's like Cross Vegas was in a lot of ways, but there's I don't think there's the crazy steep surges. So that helps even more. Being
Should
a bigger
we
guy.
jump to why that's not my course? But
sure,
okay.
Go ahead. Yeah.
So
yeah.
I just did a cross race this past weekend. I did the 3-4 race.
Yep.
I won my division out of 3 people. Yes, 35 plus 3-4. But
Yep.
we were jumped into they called it elite 3-4s.
Yeah,
Not elite 3-4s. Open 3-4s is a better way to say it.
Yeah.
I think there was like 12 or 14 people. I got second. Jose, who if you listen to our race tactics videos, he's been cleaning up on everything.
Yeah, fast sprinter.
Yeah, and you can look at those on youtube.com/trainerroad.
Yep.
But he beat me. And basically, got a couple takeaways. First, I got stung by like a wasp or a bee about 20
You were
seconds
swollen
in.
for a long time.
I know. So it's just now going away. You can still kind of see it on my head.
Yeah.
But 20 seconds in, it got stuck in my helmet, and I got stung. I was in third position. I've never started so well. So here's how I started well.
Hold on. Can we talk about the bee? Because I've always wondered, what the heck do I do when a bee gets in my helmet? I've had that before, and I've never been
Write it
stung.
out.
You freak out. You go, guys, you let everyone know, I got stung by a bee. I got stung by a bee. And
Do you just like, I mean, do you stop and take your helmet off? I don't dare put my hand in there because then I think I'll just make the bee angry. Like
I put my hand in there and tried to just flick it away.
And then is that when he stung you, or did he
No, he already
sting
stung
you?
me. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, at that point, all bets are off. It's a boxing match with the bee at that point. But
Yeah.
what have you guys done? I've never.
No, I just shake my head around and hope that it gets out. I've actually swallowed one. I mean, it's
A bee?
I don't know what it was, but it didn't sting me on the way down.
That's
so that's
impressive.
I think this was like a wasp in our area. There's
Yeah.
not a lot of bees. At least there's wasps everywhere.
Yes, yeah, all over the place.
And it was like kind of under my strap.
It can be dangerous stuff though, because like and you had an allergic reaction.
I did.
You're pretty swollen for days after.
Yeah, my wife's like, I thought it was really noticeable. She's like, no one will notice it. And then 1 second in, John looking at me, he's like, good gracious, what's wrong with your
It was
face?
2 days out, right?
Yeah, it was 2 days out. So I read online that you can have like the anaphylactic shock that you can't like breathe. I didn't have that, but actually after the race, my throat felt closed up and like I got really hoarse.
Wow.
So I don't know.
And for what it's worth, he had an EpiPen, but it was at home.
Yeah. So those
Those
things,
EpiPens do a lot of good when they're not with you, right?
I'm okay.
Yeah.
So anyways,
Well, I'm glad you're okay. Yeah.
takeaways.
Okay, let's
One,
get into it.
for a good start, this was my best start that I've had. And what I did differently, this sounds, of course you would do this, is I was actually sitting on the saddle and I had 1 foot clipped in, which I always do, but usually I'm kind of like in front of my saddle a little bit. But I was sitting and I was like really stretching my other leg so that I was almost upright, like tippy toe pushing.
On
At
the start, you're saying.
Exactly,
Okay.
yeah. And that helped me just be in like a more natural position to get that really strong first leg push down, and then my next leg clipped in.
Yeah.
2, I'm really bad at turns and grass. So although grass should be my thing because it's more power, that's what I'm saying. If there's a lot of turns at this next race, I just need to flow more. What I was doing is I'd take the turns too wide, and I wasn't doing the bike body separation. So if you don't do the bike body separation, there's only so much your bike can turn on tight turns.
Yeah.
Your bike has to lean over more than your body.
Yeah, and part of that, and not so severe. Like when you stand up, you get a lot of separation, and you want to do that because your center of gravity is going up as you stand and everything else. But the main reason that I find for bike body separation on a cross bike especially is to be able to, I guess the main thing is you kind of hover almost off the saddle. In other words, your weight isn't entirely planted, because then when you hit those bumps and it disrupts your weight, that disrupts your traction.
Well, this is the part where there's no bumps. It's just about taking a tight turn.
But you'd be surprised. Like very small undulations in what feels like extremely smooth grass, it can make a huge difference in your traction. And that's, I feel like, the biggest thing in terms of, because I guess the bike body separation thing, I don't disagree with that. But, if you're sitting on your saddle, there's some separation, but it's nowhere near what other, you're not leaning the bike over.
You're jumping to my next point.
Okay.
On this point, all my point is when it'd be like a tight turn, and I'd end up outside the tape.
Yeah.
Like my handlebars would get stuck in the tape because
Have you washed out on the grass? Yeah, the grass just inspires confidence in me. There's so much traction that
like
I
Velcro.
almost can't lose it.
But the way to turn faster is you could also just lean the bike more.
Yeah.
I'm just not leaning enough too. Like
Yeah.
either way,
Oh,
if
I
it's
see.
me, it's the bike turns not with your handlebars, right? It's a combination of your handlebars and leaning the bike.
Yeah.
And I'm not doing that enough. That's just
And
Yeah.
poor entry, poor exit.
no. I'm in the right entry line. Like I just don't lean enough.
Yeah.
Considering because I'm following these other people, and there's after this many races, there's a line on the outside that everyone takes.
Something that I think is really helpful for folks before they line up for whatever race they're doing is to do cornering drills that are extremely tight, and then do cornering drills that just allow you to carry more speed. Like if you have a big grass area, give yourself a huge amount of space, pedal up to a very fast speed, and then just start turning, and then get comfortable with making that turn a little sharper, a little sharper, a little sharper. and then work on doing extremely tight figure eights. And I've noticed then when you get out on the course, it all feels very wide open when you're doing really tight figure eights. And then that day, it's kind of like calibrating your power meter. Like you have yourself calibrated to traction and all the limits by giving yourself plenty of room to rip one of those big turns. It can be really helpful.
A mistake I did on warm-up is I didn't take any corners at race pace, at least in the grass. I was taking them more at like 80%. But then as you add that extra speed, it changes, right? Like,
totally, yeah.
The other thing that I saw at Cross Nationals last year is someone was just playing around in the grass, but this guy was ripping like, Lee McCormick, he'd like go and then he'd kind of cut into the ground and do this really, scallop, that's what he called it.
Yep.
These really short, hard, like rip, that's what you call them, like ripping on a mountain bike. This guy was doing the cross race on his in grass. And that's kind of like, if I can get to that level where you could scallop into it and come out, that would be amazing.
Which you don't necessarily do with a cross bike.
Depends on how fast you're going. Yeah.
I don't want people to think that you cutty because cutty is, I guess, the more common term that people use for that. Like, you don't do that on the cross bike when you're turning at all.
But if I could do it, I bet you I could turn well.
Well, yeah, because you'd be more familiar with traction.
Yes.
But like when you're cornering, you don't want to just like place all of your cornering in 1 second like that. That creates a lot of stress. Now, when you have really knobby tires, big voluminous tires, and you have suspension, that's really easy to do, and you have geometry from a mountain bike. And it's a good skill to have. But on a cross bike, it's much more, when they talk about hooking up and coming out of turns like that, it's really just getting your bike leaned over to the point where you're on the side knobs, it's grabbing well, and then you're causing enough flex in the tire so that you're kind of, you're at its limits. So then when you can come out of that turn, you feel a bit of a rebound, but it's not quite like a mountain bike.
Yeah. And there's no suspension and stuff too.
Right.
So basically the point is, you got to lean your bike to turn sharp.
Yeah.
So the other part of the course was it was actually way more technical. It was loose over hard and a ton of sand, and I actually shined in that section. So happy. So
nice.
the part that I did better on that, based on what Courtney McFadden and Cody Kaiser told us, is in the sand sections, leaning back but hovering. Oh my goodness, like on the flat sand going through, I could plow through them a lot better.
Nice.
And the other thing they said, which seems obvious now, but before I was never looking for the divots that other people had made. And if you ride those divots that they make, it is so much easier than creating your own divot.
Oh, yeah.
Like there'll be a line.
Right, you want to take the rut.
Yeah, and it's never, the rut never goes all the way across, right? It always breaks through.
Yeah.
The other thing, the mantra in my mind, I was thinking of, you're not riding this, especially there was downhill sound sections, is you're surfing it.
Yeah.
So that's was like, I'm not riding this, I'm surfing it. And when you get that kind of mindset, that surfing, you're not stuck, right? You're just kind of like,
it's okay to not have traction there.
Exactly. You're kind of flowing down.
You go with the flow.
You're going to jump to like a little divot to divot and go down. And that with my dropper post, I was actually faster. Jose said this too. In the technical spots, I was faster than Jose and another pretty good mountain biker here in Reno.
Nice.
So those are two awesome like takeaways to do. Yeah.
Way to go.
Yeah.
Nice job.
I also saw Pete Morris on an uphill section bunny hop a barrier.
Yeah.
Which was
we have video
amazing.
of that.
Yeah. Hey, can we post that on the Facebook?
Yeah, you'll get
Podcast
to
group?
you get to critique Pete's form. Everybody, I'm sure, will be
There's a
excited
whole
about
lot
that.
of power at once.
Yeah, exactly. Probably not good in a race because you get so tired. But anyways, it was good. I was with Jose attacked me in the grass. I couldn't keep up in the grass, and I was pulling him back in the technical section. We had lapped somebody, and my own fault. Instead of waiting to try to take a different line, it was too technical of a line. I washed out and crashed. That took like 15 seconds out, and then there was enough.
Yeah.
He was already 5 seconds ahead of me, so it was kind of
just the elastic broke.
And no one was behind me, and
no man's way.
Exactly. So anyway, it was very, very fun. Hope to get better. We race next. Less than a week from now.
Yeah. You got beat by a Trainer Road user, though, so that's always better than a non-Trainer Road user.
Yeah.
So good job to him. If you want to find out more about Trainer Road and what we do here, by the way, you can do so at trainerroad.com. And we've got a bunch of new stuff that we're pushing out with that. Nate, you kind of had a special announcement that you wanted to share.
Yeah, you guys don't even know what it is.
Yeah. Does this have to do with Trainer Road at all? Or what does it have to do with?
Well, guys, last night I signed up for Ironman Santa Rosa 70.3.
What? Really?
Chad doesn't even know.
What?
Yes, I wanted to pull this on you, but
Whoa! Say it again.
Wait,
Signed
what?
up for what?
Ironman Santa Rosa 70.3.
When?
What?
July 28th or 18th or something.
Of next year?
Yeah. Well, next year. No, of 2019.
Whoa. So
Wow.
my first question, because I'm a gear nerd, is are you?
You guys gotta let me finish.
No. Sorry.
Okay.
Are you gonna get the better fork for your bike?
Yeah.
For the TT bike, because right now you have the
I still want to get
3 with the skinny forks. You
yeah,
gotta get the fat one.
I want to get the hydraulic brakes
illegal.
on my P5.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool. Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Wow.
So here's the twist.
Bold maneuver.
I'm only doing the bike.
Oh.
Yeah.
All
So you're
right.
doing
Never
relay?
mind.
My wife's gonna do the swim and the run,
Whoa.
and my wife I hate when I do this. My sister. My sister's doing the whole thing. She invited us.
Yeah.
My wife doesn't like to. She could do a half pretty easily, but she doesn't like to ride outside.
Yeah.
I like to ride outside.
Yeah.
And it'll be so great to do just the half bike, not having to worry to run.
Yeah.
Wow. I didn't know
Yeah.
you could do a relay like that where it could be one person does 2 legs and another just does one.
I didn't either at the bigger races. I don't think I looked at the Ironman Santa Rosa because my wife, we was like, well, we should do the Ironman relay, but I don't think you can do it at the Ironman level. But the half Ironman,
You can.
I think you can. So at least at this one, you can.
So you're doing a half Ironman bike split.
Yeah,
That's
so
what
it's
you're prepping
56,
for.
and that's pretty. I just looked last year in February when I was at my peak. I did I think it was 283 or 287 normalized power for like 2 hours and 37 minutes
Yeah.
on a loop here.
Yeah.
So at sea level, if I could do anything like that on the TT bike, for those people who are triathletes, that would be major power. But it's probably not because I have problems on TT bike, but
Right.
that would be cool. It'd be fun.
This is exciting.
Yeah, it'd be cool. So hopefully there'll be users there. And
Are you going to specifically train for this? Or are you just going to take whatever fitness you have and go for it?
yeah, I'm just going to be a comfy setup that Dan Anfield put me on the bike.
Yep.
And I'll probably do one 3-hour loop before that,
Got it.
and then still do kind of the crit stuff. And I have a bunch of mountain bike races that I've scheduled before that.
For a second, I got scared that we were going to get roped into
That's
doing
where I
one.
thought this was going.
Yeah, okay, yeah,
So,
okay, yeah.
I want to shut that down real quick.
Yeah, not right now, please. That would be pretty
This is
rough.
the beginnings, guys.
I know, it's the beginning. At some point, we're going to do one.
September
so.
13th,
Yeah,
2018.
absolutely. Let's see. So I guess with that, have we covered all the different things? That we
There's
wanna
one
cover?
other thing. We're launching a new calendar product very soon. If you go to the on Facebook, if you go to the Trainer Road beta group, and there's a post there where you can sign up for the beta. We're letting everyone in right now. It's going really well. So it takes we do it once a day. We let new people in, and you just check the website to see if you're have access to the new calendar.
Yeah, it's a new set of features we're pretty excited about. I would check them out. We've got a ton of new things coming. So if you want to check those things out, of course, trainerroad.com. You can see them there. Look it up in the App Store, that sort of thing. Bert, shall we?
Let's go, Bert.
All right. I've got a bone to pick with Bert, but we'll carry through. He says, I ride a fairly aggressive setup on my road bike with a lot of drop, narrow handlebar for my size, and hoods angled in. I'm going to stop there really quick. All of us, we just got new road bikes.
Oh,
And
let's talk about that.
Yeah. Okay, yeah.
Sorry, Bert.
Sorry,
Get to
Bert.
later. See you later, Bert. This is just a segue so we can talk about bikes.
So all 3 of us got the new S-Works Venge.
Yes.
Not the same bike. Like we
We're
got
gonna
separate
share.
bikes. Yeah. So Nate, you're 6'6". Chad, how tall are you?
6'2", 188 centimeters.
And I'm 198 centimeters.
Oh yeah.
We're going to try to do this where we say
Yeah, that's
both
a
of
good
them.
point. Yeah, and I'm 5'10", which in centimeters, I believe that comes to a 177. So right around there. Or no, that's not right. That says I'm 5'8", so I need to be 10. Yeah, Google's not working.
I might be wrong too.
I'm tall-ish, maybe. I don't know, but I'm 5'10"
I did
inches.
my homework.
Yeah, I'm 71 inches is
no,
my height.
I'm
overall.
198 centimeters. That's right.
All right, good, neat. Okay, so point is, you've derailed me, Nate.
Okay.
Geez, y'all can figure these things out. Siri exists. You can just say that. But anyways, we all got that bike. But the thing that's interesting to me is that we all went for, I think, 40 centimeter width
Narrow
bars.
bars.
Oh, you guys all came to 40?
Yep.
That's what I've been on for the last 4
Chad's
or 5
been on
bikes.
them.
Really?
Yep. Chad's been on
I
40s.
like narrow bars.
So
You were on 42s or 44s?
I was on 44s before because everyone says you're a tall guy, you need to have wide bars. Went to 40s. I love them. Less neck pain. You're more aero. I'm more comfortable. Yeah, it's good. They weigh less. 5 grams probably, but
The
significant,
fact
yeah.
is you give up leverage when you go for a narrower bar, but is leverage necessarily really needed on a road bike?
How much leverage are we talking about? I mean, these aren't mountain bike bars where we're paring it way down. We're going a couple centimeters down on 44s to 40s.
Also, with a mountain bike, it's pretty important to have that leverage because of the terrain you're going through.
Yeah.
In this case, you don't really need it. So I did that because, aero is everything. Aero is important.
I wonder if he would sprint with more power on like a 46 versus a 40.
Probably.
Maybe.
I don't know.
You'd probably be able to create more force through the bike. I don't know if that would necessarily equal more power to the pedal.
Does it though?
Would you go slower?
From a hammer gripped position, slightly wider, is it really going to impact it that much? I can't see it.
Probably very minimal.
Think about if you're lifting weights in the gym and you go out slightly, like a little bit, can you really then put out a bunch more power?
Stronger.
Yeah, it's not a huge no.
The other thing I'm thinking about is if you are sprinting if you have a more narrow base, you're going to be more aero. So even though let's say you give up 10 watts, you might get that back in aerodynamics going at 35 miles per hour.
Right. I think I'm the only one stepping down from 42s to 40s. So, but I usually,
the smallest.
Yeah, I know, smallest one. So, 180 centimeters for everybody, by the way. So, but I think that's something that you see like more and more people doing. Some guys even go down to like 36s and some rare bars, that they're able to go like extremely narrow. I don't want to go that narrow. And a lot of this I think correlates to the width of your shoulders in relation to how you sit on the bike. Those two things, how they combine, can create something that's more or less comfortable. But you found it more comfortable, you said?
Yeah. So if you can tell on the live podcast, but Chad has a much more broad shoulders than I do.
Yes.
I'm wearing a medium-sized shirt right now. You're wearing, I'm guessing, a large. There's no shoulder seams in yours, but
yeah.
But so I'm just saying he's much wider than I am, and he's on the same size bars as I am.
Yeah, and I don't have any back pain or neck issues from it. So
yeah. So when you do change that stuff, that's kind of what you'd want to look at. So Bert, back to Bert. He says, on the road, I'm comfortable on my bike and feel pretty dialed either on the hoods or the drops. However, I have trouble holding my position on the trainer and find myself doing most of my recovery sitting up and spending a lot of time on the tops overall. I've checked to make sure my bike is sitting level on the trainer, so it's not like my front wheel is too low. You have any advice you'd like to share on your 2-star podcast? There's my bone to pick.
Thanks, Bert.
Yeah, but then he closes it with XOXO, Bert.
Yeah, exactly.
So a bit of tongue in cheek.
Next
there.
question from
2-star.
Matt. Thanks, Bert.
Exactly. Yep. See you later, Bert.
Chad, first thing is, he's saying on his recovery, he's sitting up.
Yeah.
Who cares? Right?
Yeah. First off, who cares? But on the flip side of that coin, I would be concerned. I think even at low pressure, low pressure on the quads. So basically, you have 3 contact points or 3 sets of contact points, and you're shifting it down to 2 because the legs are kind of out of the equation because you're not really putting any weight on them. You're just turning the pedals over
During these recovery intervals.
during the recovery rides. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I question, if you're not comfortable in that position, how much extra work are you doing when you are working? And I know the legs take some of the toll, but if you're not balanced on the bike in a relaxed state, then you're probably not balanced on it during a working state. I'm sure that could be argued. But I do my recovery rides indoors most of the time, and I'm just as comfortable during the recovery rides. I will say after about an hour or so, my undercarriage does start to get a little fed up with it all.
I'm thinking this
when you have less pressure on the pedals, right?
Over the longer term, but I don't know if he's talking about early in the ride. I mean, do anything for an hour in the same position. There's some fatigue's going to creep into the system.
What if it's this? Like I see. This happens to people outside too. You do 5 minutes hard effort. You don't sit in that same attack position during your rest period of the 5 effort.
True too.
Or if someone attacks in a road race,
everyone changes.
They always sit up, right? They're like, "Oh my God, I'm sitting up," they put their hands and try to stretch out.
And maybe that's it. Maybe he's not even conscious of the fact that when he does interval workouts, he's actually shifting his position more than during a recovery ride, where he sits in that same position the whole time. It could be as simple as that.
Yeah, you added something. You mentioned something that when a rider isn't perfectly balanced, that these sort of things tend to crop up, like these discomfort issues. And I'm just doing our traditional base low volume plan right now to really focus on pedaling mechanics. This has been so good for me so far, even just on the few workouts that I've done so far. But it's like, it's low enough that puts me in a position where I'm like, oh yeah, okay, that's getting uncomfortable. Yeah. That's because it's not a lot of power that I'm, pressing my body off those pedals, off the saddle with the pressure through the pedals. And it's been great because then I'm forced to basically look at my technique and go, oh yeah, I'm completely in the wrong spot. My hips are folded forward. I need to roll them back slightly. My shoulders are shrugged up. I need to relax my shoulders. I need to have a more fluid pedal stroke. It's just been perfect for me going back and kind of resetting all of this.
Forces you to work on your pedal mechanics,
And an hour and a half the other day of just pedaling an easy pace like that. I had no saddle discomfort as long as I made sure I was paying attention to the proper position.
See, that's the other thing. I don't know if he's talking about hurting on the the crotch region, but if he's when he's not putting much pressure on his quads, if he's tipping that pelvis forward, I mean, that's a lot of weight that's only going to the undercarriage, as I've put it, rather than the legs supporting it. So
I guess to kind of back this up, I mean, like the one thing that a lot of people probably don't think about too is you don't have wind resistance. And even though it seems silly, it really does help lift you off a bit. It does alleviate some pressure on the wrists, alleviate even some pressure on the saddle in a lot of cases.
Yeah, that makes sense.
You know, when you have wind pushing, you know, a significant amount of wind pushing against your whole body. You know, when you're inside, if you have, I guess, a really powerful fan, it might be able to kind of lift you off, but that might take you off the bike. But it's something that you have to like consider, right?
A couple grams.
Yeah, exactly. But it's something to consider. I notice when I'm riding my bike and if I'm going at like a really great rate of speed down a descent or anything else like that, a lot of the time it's a rest for my wrist, for example, because it's just a little less pressure than me pushing down.
So in my experience, I'm almost always kind of have my hands like a couple centimeters back while I'm training inside doing intervals, and then when I get really uncomfortable, I grab the tops, and then when I get really, really uncomfortable, I'm moving the whole time because I'm trying to like find something that reduces the pain, but nothing does.
Yeah,
I might need a shorter stem.
Perhaps. So first thing, check your bike fit. But it sounds like he's pretty happy with his bike fit in most circumstances, under most circumstances. Second thing would be to make sure you are actually seated on the saddle in a proper manner. You know, you've weighted the sit bones and you're not just hinged on your perineum, your soft tissue. And then thirdly, move around. Like Nate just described, move your hand position, but also get in and out of the saddle. And on a recovery day, maybe you don't spend much time out of the saddle, but just getting out of the saddle for 5 or 10 pedal strokes will break that up nicely, I promise.
And I move around on the saddle. I don't know if that's
that too.
I do it
Saddle
all
shifting.
the time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, some people stay really anchored, and that's fine. Some people move around. It isn't necessarily bad to move around. Great tips. I like how you broke it down like that, Chad. Good stuff. Matt's question. He says, hey everyone, just wrapped up my first season of racing and learned a ton. Thanks for all the help with the prep, both training and advice on the podcast. Sweet.
You're welcome.
Sometimes I forget about that we're kind of like, we're kind of like people's coaches. We really are people's, kind of helping all these people out.
You two are.
It's cool. It's
along for the ride.
I'm what's called the anti-coach. Don't do this.
Here's
Don't
what
do that.
not to do.
Here's what not to do.
He says, I was reflecting on my last road race and thinking of ways I could have used the course profile to my advantage better. As a new racer, I didn't really know how to use the power I had in the best way possible. Could you please spend some time covering how road races over different course profiles usually pan out, or how to read the profile ahead of time? I think many people like me might think flat stage equals sprint finish, uphill finish equals a climber's day.
That's like the Tour de France watching.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Going to be my first bit of advice. So
okay, cool. He says, but there seems to be a lot more variability in course profiles than just these two. For example, what's the best strategy for a given rider on a downhill finish or a lumpy race, something that would be nice and rolling? And then he says another interesting conversation might be discussing how to select a course that suits you. I feel like I hear that phrase a lot, but don't really know what it means for me as someone who isn't necessarily a true sprinter or climber, but better at 1 to 5 minute efforts. So we'll kind of try to wrap that in. Maybe we can cover the last question first on how to analyze maybe and how to figure out what race is ideal. The first thing I do is I Google. I look up the name of the race, whatever it is, and then I'll say like GPS or whatever else. You can say Strava, whatever else, and you can find a person that's ridden it before.
Yeah, gone are the days. So when I started racing back in the 90s, we didn't have access to this stuff. So recon was show up early and pre-ride the course. And if you didn't have access to that, you got to piece it together. You got to ask people who have done it. Hope the course hasn't changed if these people give you any insightful information. But it was simpler times, and as a result of it, you kind of had to figure it out on the fly most of the time.
I think those tips still sit in they're great tips though, because you can have the GPS course profile, but there's so many times we're just looking at the course profile, you have to fill in the gaps beyond that, and it's really helpful to get a person's perspective. So like the first thing I usually do is search for that course profile. I find it. Then a lot of the time what I actually do is I put it into a service called Best Bike Split, because then it gives me an idea of how to pace this sort of effort roughly, assuming that it would just be a solo effort. And then at that point, I start asking people or looking around on the internet to see if people have talked about the race and how it unfolds.
There's a wealth of information to be.
Yep. And then I kind of piece those things together, and that's how I get a feel for what the race is. And then, it's easy to understand, if it suits you or not. If you're good at 1 to 5 minute efforts, like we have in this case, with Matt, you have a lot of different races that I think would fit. 1 to 5 minutes is a great range.
You can do a lot with 1 to 5 minute power.
When I think 1 to 5, the only thing you're not going to be good at is if there's a 40-minute climb in it, or like really long climb,
or a mass finish.
No, even that, because I think if it's a matte finish or a mass flat finish,
yes,
you're the one that's going to jump the sprinters. So even like
Possibly.
a crit, right? I mean, that's your only choice, right?
Right.
Is to jump the sprinters,
Yeah.
and that's really, I think, until you get to the upper categories, the speed usually of at least in my experience in the lower categories, I'm lucky I get to race with fast people and non-sanctioned ones, and then the slower people, they don't do this huge like 35 mile per hour train.
Not a lot of organization.
Yeah, that you can't like jump out of.
Sure. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Where at the lower categories, they're all like, they're not working together as well, and everyone's trying to be that sprinter. So everyone wants to like hold up, right? You might be going 20 or 24 or 25,
Right.
and then you can jump that for sure.
Yeah, that's a really good point. In terms of if a course suits you, it really depends on how the pack is going to race it too. So you kind of have to know what tendencies exist in the group that you're going to race with. And if you don't know those, then you do just have to rely on the course profile and any beta you can get from people.
The other thing, if you're good at 1 to 5, I'm thinking get into a breakaway. That's another great thing you could do, especially on a lumpy course.
Yeah, so my first bit of advice would be to watch the Grand Tours. I mean, you have 3 weeks of daily racing, say for the rest days, and you can glean something from every one of those. Mm-hmm. And what I find really interesting is that it's never as predictable as you think it is. You see, it's a flat course. You know it's going to come down to a mass start finish. You know the big teams are going to reel the breakaway in at the last minute. It doesn't always happen. Yeah. Sometimes it works out. And in the case of a guy with 1 to 5 minute power, you're in that early break, you make it work, then you start attacking that break and using that power again later in the race. Mm-hmm. It can, the cards can fall your way.
And some races that I really like to watch for that sort of information are the spring classics, because when it's just one day, you tend to see more things thrown at the wall to see if they stick. Because a lot of the time in a Grand Tour, you don't see quite as many tactics, or you see sure, they'll let them get away and then they'll end up reeling them in, or they won't care about them because they're inconsequential to the GC.
Those are high-level races too, where they know exactly what they have to do in order to bring that break down in the nick of time.
Yes.
It doesn't usually work that way, not in low category races.
And so I was watching a lot of the USA Pro Crit stuff with Cliff Bar.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. They went out of the breakaway so many times.
Yeah.
And that's the highest level crit racing in the US.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
And you would think that in a crit, like the Peloton could pull back.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But it didn't happen.
And that's criterium racing and races that come down to sprints, flatter races. Even on the climbing races, you assume you're not a climber. That means you aren't going to ride it like a climber would ride it. Yep. You don't sit in and wait for the final climb and then go full gas from the bottom with the rest of the climbers. Yeah. You do something different. In your case, employ a breakaway prior to the climb.
Yep.
Most likely. I mean, there are other tactics, or get in the early break, et cetera.
Yeah. I guess now getting into, just basic scenarios too that a lot of people see, really the one thing that you have to consider is the larger context of the race before you consider how the tactics will go. If it is within a stage race, and you should expect that typical thing that you see during Grand Tours, in the sense that people will let certain people go, they may reel them in later on, but there's a greater goal. But if it's just a one-day race, then you can expect kind of no holds barred in terms of what people will do. There aren't any contingencies in place.
Longer or bigger picture sort of stuff, yeah.
Right, exactly. I notice that, so if there's a race going on in lower categories, it's a bit of a free-for-all. So we'll just assume it's kind of higher category stuff. And especially if you have something like a criterium, you have to know that a break will get away or try to get away very early on. That's just how things work. If you have a race that I found with a consequential climb at some point in it, sometimes you'll see breaks go, but really the action starts in those sort of moments. So during your course recon, if there's a really big climb or really, rolly, climby section amongst a relatively flat section of a course, that's where you can expect things to happen. So when it comes to tactics, I think you have to mix not only the possibilities of what a person could do on a bicycle, but how that's going to interact with the terrain that is going over. Mm-hmm. And that's we have one race in the Northern California region called the Winters Road Race. Actually, I don't think it's going on anymore, but it's a great road race. And it was basically through orchards, and it was kind of flat and nothing until you got to these really steep, rolly climbs, and then you do laps on that. And I think that, P12s ended up doing something like 5 or 6 laps on that. And every time you basically knew that somebody was going to try to get away, and then by the time they hit the climbs, the pack would end up usually rolling up and carrying enough speed through those rolling hills that it would be able to get close enough and then they'd reel them in. But really the action always happened. It was almost like somebody called a truce on the rest of the course because they knew it was going to happen right there. So in terms of tactics, there's so many different things you can do. You can look at the Cliff Bar videos that we've done. You look at the race analysis videos we've done on YouTube, and you can see different tactics being tried and how they play out. But the big thing is it always ties in to how the course, the course profile.
I want to say 2 comments on that. First comment is, and if you know if that's going to be your weak spot, like probably for Chad and I, that would be our weak spot because relative, we're not as good at climbers as something like Jonathan or something. Sure. Is I would go in a different spot. You know what I mean? Like you go in a spot, just because everyone says it always happens this way, when you do something when it doesn't happen that way, everyone goes, wait, they look at each other. Like, you're not good supposed intel to do this.
If you know when a race blows up every time that race takes place, well, don't go there. I mean, just try to piece something else together, something that catches people unaware.
I've seen races where that happens, these are silly ones. Floyd Landis, when he did it, that's obviously silly. Chris Froome too, though. Everyone's like, why would you go 2.5 hours from the end?
Yes,
like that seems like a silly attack. We can look at each other for a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, you have to take risks too. But in response to your selecting courses that suit you, this goes very much hand in hand with what we talk about avoiding when you pigeonhole yourself, saying I'm not a climber, I'm not a sprinter. How do you know? I mean, certainly if you know you have particular strengths, you'll choose courses that suit those strengths. But if you can't, it doesn't mean don't do the race. It doesn't mean don't get out there and glean some new experience, because you can learn a lot about yourself as a rider. You can learn a lot of new strategy. You can learn about your opponents. I mean, there's so much other information to be gathered. I highly recommend not avoiding courses that you're not specifically suited to.
And my second point, that's goes right in what I was going to say for the second one is, I think a lot of people, they give up a chance to win because they don't want to get last place, right? Like you say, I can survive in this race in the peloton if I just sit in rather than attack early, and then there might be a counterattack and I might get spit out and get last place on the overall results. But it's so much better for you as a rider and for your overall development to try that stuff out than to just sit in the whole time.
You don't learn.
What do you learn from finishing 30th and just kind of phoning in the finish?
Yeah.
I mean, take some chances. I mean, mix things up a bit. See, what you're good at, what you're not good at.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter that you get last place. That doesn't mean you were the slowest.
Totally.
And it doesn't matter if you do a shorter race distance.
Yeah.
Right? These are 2 things that people need to get over.
Yep. And I can't help but think that if you're good at 1 to 5 minute efforts, you have you should never. You should never be saying, oh no, this course is really not for me. Even on something perhaps with a long climb, you could really throw something in there that might be able to get away. So you're pretty versatile. I think of Peter Sagan, for example. Like that guy, remember the Tour of California when he
can do just about anything. But 1 to 5 minute power is certainly in his wheelhouse.
Exactly right. Yep. Yeah.
What's not?
So basically, So basically, Matt, you're Peter Sagan. So good news. Let's go into Eric's question. He says, after a hot and intense ride or workout, what is the recommended approach to cool my body down? Should I use icy cold 32-degree Fahrenheit water? Oh, that sounds rough. A cold shower
awful.
Around 50 degrees Fahrenheit, or a lukewarm shower around 70 degrees Fahrenheit. Colder water will cool down my core the fastest, but it might also stop blood flow to my muscles, which I assume is bad for recovery and repair. This is like the ice bath thing, and I know I come from the world of motocross originally, and everyone did ice baths.
With all these recovery modalities, you have to ask yourself what the goal is. I mean, if you're just looking to cool yourself back down, then you have a lot of freedom that you don't have if you're chasing recovery or adaptation. So, and the unfortunate thing with all these recovery modalities is they're so hard to measure, and it's so hard to pick out what makes the one difference. It's really difficult to attribute it to any one thing. I'm using ice baths now, and I'm performing better. It must be the ice baths. Well, what else are you doing differently? So it's really hard to say for sure that it's one thing and not a combination of others. And on the matter of recovery modalities, a lot of this is culled from Alex Hutchinson's book Endure. And then in particular, he cites a guy named Olivier Dupuis, who did a meta-analysis where he culled over almost 1,700 studies down to 99 that he felt were well developed. and attributed to all these recovery modalities were basically after one of 4 things: reducing muscle soreness, reducing muscle fatigue, reducing inflammation, or repairing muscle damage. And then within that, he saw that both in terms of reducing muscle soreness and muscle fatigue, they were so heavily placebo influenced that he could never say with any, surety that this is in fact what's making the difference here. And Alex Hutchinson in the book I just mentioned, Endure, talks about one particular study where they compared 59-degree ice baths, so we're talking very cold, to 95-degree tepid baths. And it was unanimous that the 59 degrees worked better in terms of recovery, reducing soreness, reducing fatigue, in comparison to the tepid baths. But then when they used the tepid baths and they introduced a quote unquote recovery fluid or recovery oil, I think it was, everyone said, nope, they're just as good as the 59 degrees cold baths. Turns out that magic oil, that recovery oil, was bath soap. So again, the placebo effect is a strong one. It's really hard to argue that, my recovery improved because of this modality, or it improved because I just feel better. But then, the argument is, well, if you feel better, who cares?
Yeah.
If it's in your brain, right?
If it's in your brain, that's better than nothing.
Not anymore, people. Sorry. Killjoy Chad.
Yeah.
Thanks, Chad. I was putting in recovery oil, and my wife wrote on my shampoo, it says recovery oil. She said she's been switching it out.
Such a good season.
It's real recovery oil.
But then on the other side of that, or in addition to that, the inflammation side, the muscle damage side, the only way they can get that information is via blood tests. And the hard thing with blood tests is it's really hard to link changes in blood parameters to actual changes in improvement. Again, it's just a tough correlation to draw. So it kind of goes back to what I just said. If you believe it works, well, why not?
Yeah.
But there's just not a lot of hard science to back up any of these.
I thought there was some stuff that showed that it actually reduced adaptions, like getting too cold.
Anything does. So when it comes to ice baths in particular, I mean, there seems to be, at least within the few studies I went over, a tipping point right around 50 degrees, where above that, it's cold enough to encourage. It's not too cold to discourage vasoconstriction. So you're still getting the blood flow that you're after. Whereas if you go colder than that, the blood flow reduces, and then everything that comes with improved blood flow goes with it.
Makes sense.
And then So say you do find that perfect increase in blood flow and reduction in inflammation, then that's when you have to start asking yourself the questions, is this delaying the healing process, the natural healing process? Is this hindering adaptation, maybe affecting the cell signaling down at a lower level? Is it flying in the face of the natural responses that would otherwise take place? And this brought me back to a quote that Jordan Rapp made a while back. He calls this outsourcing. So he says outsourcing your recovery to an ice bath is the same as outsourcing anything else. You don't gain the experience from doing it yourself. So in this case, your body doesn't gain that experience. He likens it to 2 steps forward, 1 step back, and I fully agree with him.
Yeah. I can't help but think that it feels a bit like a ham-fisted approach to perhaps a problem that doesn't require such a thing.
Yeah, maybe it's one of those things that we don't need to manage, at least not so closely. Maybe we manage it through the 2 things that we know and we can measure do work, and that's sleep and refueling. And when it comes to refueling, I'm talking about not only the composition of what you're eating, but also the timing of when you eat it.
If you're hot after a race, I know a lot of people, it feels so good to get in that cold lake or river.
Okay, so that's something else entirely, and that's something that I wanted to add in because I did this very thing in Italy where the hotel rooms weren't well air conditioned. Same thing could apply to our
Single track 6.
Single track 6,
Oh, yeah.
where you have to find methods to cool yourself down. And in that case, you're not really concerned with anything but thermal regulation, just cooling yourself back down. And I found cold, wet towels, legs propped up, and a nap, along with cool fluids, did the trick.
I was going to say ice slushies.
Yeah.
Like those kind of things, especially right after a race. Would that be another
Feels
good,
great.
like a real sugary, icy?
Yeah, why not?
From 7-Eleven.
Post-workout?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but at a race, right?
Yeah.
Just have like a big icy
Slurpees.
machine.
That'd be
Yeah,
magical.
Slurpees to everybody.
Yeah.
Wouldn't
That's
that
what
be
we
cool?
should do. We should have the Trainer Road Slurpee trailer.
Yeah, that'd be pretty awesome.
And then it has like how much whey protein do you want in your Slurpee?
Yeah, that'd be pretty
Very cool.
awesome. I think I see a lot of people, I feel like it's so unpleasant getting into a true ice bath. Like if anybody hasn't done it, it is extremely unpleasant, very painful and uncomfortable. And I feel like a lot of people actually glean kind of like they feel as if they're doing absolutely everything and they're sacrificing everything. And you get into this thing that's, bordering on the self-masochism, where you're basically getting to the point where you feel like I'm willing to do whatever it takes to get faster.
There's probably some small psychological benefit to suffering after you suffer like that. I mean,
sure,
it just makes you a
right?
bit tougher.
Yeah, yeah. It makes you think that you're doing perhaps something that other people aren't willing to do. You're willing to make
Dedication.
yourself
But
more
then
uncomfortable.
Why not tie that back to the whole placebo effect again? Ice baths make me feel like I did the right thing, and I feel, in my mind, positive about the future training because I did, I checked all the boxes.
And here's my thought process on that. If really what you're doing is you're telling yourself that you have, you're so dedicated, you're willing to do whatever it takes. in my mind, I would rather be so dedicated that I'd be willing to complete my workouts with absolute precision instead of close precision, and then to recover as absolutely as well as I can instead of, you know what I mean? Like put that vigor and vim that you have into other aspects or all aspects, rather than just dumping into something like, that's outsourced like that. That's just, you're hoping that takes care of it. I think that's something that a lot of people perhaps miss. I even see people, when they talk about like fasted rides or anything that makes it more hardcore, so to speak, in air quotes, they derive a lot of like personal pride out of that, and that can help them at least, stay motivated or something like that. But you can do that. You can take that and sprinkle it throughout other aspects of your performance or your training and glean the same benefit, instead of putting it into something like, an ice bath.
Before we were building this office and we were designing it, I was going to have a room. I wanted to have a room where I was going to put a sauna in it and a ice bath, like an ice, like
call it our marginal gains room.
Yeah, like a collegiate or NFL stadium or something would have that.
Yep.
And I looked for both, and for the sauna, there's a lot of Finnish studies that say it, but then there's a lot of studies that don't. It was too went back and forth on it for performance. Yeah. Then the ice baths, I couldn't find anything that really was like this will make you faster. It's it's exactly what Chad said. It's either detrimental or placebo, rather than there are some good studies and more crop up on the heat stress training and how some of the benefits overlap. Well, they don't overlap, but complement the benefits you get from altitude training. Yep. So more and more science is cropping up, and I'm still a firm believer in the whole. Can we put one in your office?
Heat stress
then?
approach.
We could just use
it.
Can
just roll right into Chad's office.
Yeah, in the afternoon.
I see what you know.
We all train in the afternoon. Just jump in the afternoon.
Yeah, as long as we face it away from me. I
don't
want to
sweaty. I picture Chad working, and then come in with a towel on. Hi, Chad.
Like a newspaper. Sweaty, half-clad body staring at me for 30
Sitting
minutes.
Down right there so we can stare right at Chad while he works. That'd be comfortable.
Let's not do that.
Yeah. Joseph's question. Ready? He says, "Hey guys, love the podcast. It's a great mix of tech training and don't take yourself too seriously advice." Awesome.
We try hard.
I like how you summed that up. Yeah. He says, "My question is about the racing mindset. I primarily compete in cross-country mountain biking and an Xterra triathlon," which for those that don't know, that's off-road triathlon. So they swim in a lake or something similar, and then they mountain bike and they trail run. Sounds like a kind of a strangely good time.
Sounds kind of great, yeah.
Yeah, right. He says, "I'm getting quite fit, and in training, I can drop people and ride very aggressively. However, on race day, I have a very difficult time being aggressive and finding myself being way too polite on the trails. I often get stressed if someone is nipping at my wheel to pull over to let that one person pass, and often I end up letting the whole field pass. Can you offer some advice on how to be an aggressive racer without being a jerk?"
Yeah, that happens sometimes. I've had that where you're on a trail and one person's behind you, and you're like, I'm just getting out of the way for this person. Yeah. And then it's there's 14 back. And they all come back and you just stop.
If I'm if I'm second in line, third in line, and I see one person pull over, I get so close to the person in front of me so that the person that's pulled over doesn't have a chance to get back over.
Yeah. Jonathan seems like a nice guy, but when you're racing cross country, you're in it. You're competitive. You're in it to win it.
Yeah. I'm not rude. But I'm assertive, I guess I would say.
Yeah, you're very assertive.
Yeah, and that's the thing that people, I think, that's how you separate it. First of all, if I'm slower and somebody's behind me and we're not on the last lap, I let them by. National championships is probably a different story, right? But even then, if it's early on, I might do it because many times you'll find yourself being so caught up in the rider behind you that you're just wasting that mental energy and focus that you could be putting into being a better rider. So a lot of the time, I concede that and then get into a spot where I can truly focus. Because I feel like, especially with mountain biking, cyclocross, or very tactical racing, like criterium racing or anything else like that, if you're not mentally very focused and sharp, you miss things. Sure. And it can cause even crashes. So from my point of view, I feel that there's never any room to be rude or demeaning to a person, and you hear that a lot of times in races, and it's definitely not needed.
That's the worst.
That's
never needed, and you don't do that.
Oh heck no, never. But there is certainly, if I'm behind somebody and I want to get by, and it's apparent that I'm faster than that person, I will kindly ask them genuinely. I'll say, whenever you get a chance, do you mind if I pass?
Yeah, that seems to be the statement. I hear that when you get a chance.
Yep. I don't want to make that person pull over instantly. I don't want to make them do anything like that. It's just whenever they get a chance. If they don't respond to that and they don't move over, then I'll say, I'd really like to get by. And then if they don't do that, then at some point I will make a pass, right?
Escalates.
Yeah, and I'll make a pass, and that doesn't mean that I will knock them over. I would never do that. You may bump elbows with them, that sort of thing, but you don't knock them over. But that means that, look, you just have to wait and find your time to pass. Now, if you're that rider that's getting passed and you're kind of worried about that, honestly, if you're worried about it, if the pace, or I say the main rule is if the pace differential is really, the delta between you and that rider is huge, and you know that, then move over and let him by.
It's like when I hear a lapped rider coming by, or either way, I'm lapping someone or someone's lapping me, then you got to get out of really fast.
Yeah, those two things don't mix, right?
Yeah.
So keep those ones separate, and if that person's really fast, get out of the way. Otherwise, behave as natural, I guess. If you're a mean person and you've like this aggressive, it doesn't sound like you're a mean person at all, Joseph.
No, it's
because
possible
you're
to be
struggling.
aggressive without being a jerk.
Yeah, exactly. I think that it's totally okay.
It's that fine line. I mean, you recognize you're the stronger rider and you got to get around. Doesn't make you a jerk if you do so.
It sounds like Joseph is a good swimmer. He gets on the trail, and then some really good mountain bikers get on behind him and come up to pass.
Which is common in Xterra, from what I gather, is that you
All
have really
triathlons.
fast mountain bikers too that like go to Xterra, and they're really bad swimmers, and then they're fantastic mountain bikers. Yeah.
And what do you do with if there is a hole? This happened to me at Carson City, except I crashed. And then I got back on my bike and I had to wait for like 40 people to pass because there wasn't a good spot to jump back in.
Yep.
You wait.
You just have to wait.
Yep. In my mind, if you pull over and there's a whole string of traffic that's really that close, the reason that they're there is because you were holding things up. And in my mind, and so it's okay. Like, let them pass, and don't tell yourself that you're a pushover or you're doing something wrong. That's just how it goes. If there's a whole line of traffic, that means that it needs to spread out. So I'm okay with it. And I've had this year at a cross country race, there were kids that I've been teaching that were just blowing by me, and like new riders, because I was just on a really bad day in a race and I was climbing extremely slowly. And I pulled over and I let a whole string of like 9 people go by, and every one of them just completely punched my ego in the face, right? Like, but it was okay, and I had to be okay with that because the fact was I was holding them up, right? So
for sure.
it's not my decision to be able to hold up their race.
Here's another question I have. I'm signed up to do, or not signed up, but I'm going to do those races down in California, the TBF ones that I like. But it's a short loop, and there'll be lapped riders. And occasionally, this has messed people up, but I'll say coming on your right. Because usually on the road, it's always on your left. But sometimes based on where the trail is, some really new riders too, they don't pull over. They're just trying to like stay alive.
Yep.
And there'll be a section on my right to pass, and I've said on your right, and then they pull into the right.
Yeah.
And they yell at me and they say, "Why didn't you say on your left?" And I'm like, "Because there's nowhere on your left."
When you're
to
already
go.
just clinging, that's hard information to process.
Yeah.
Right and left. It's surprising, but it's hard.
Yeah.
And, well, there's clinging like physiologically, and then there's psychology. No, with your brain. I can't say it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you're scared because you think you're going to be hurt on the trail. So you don't want to.
Totally.
At the higher levels, people, they go off the trail and it's no big deal.
Yeah, and it's
Can
a lot
you do
of the
that?
time.
Can you say on your right and pass on the right?
Totally. The tricky thing is like I prefer to use instead of on your, because on your oftentimes gets dropped. It's not really very well pronounced language, versus right or left is a little bit better. I usually say passing left, passing right.
Ooh,
I
that's
use the
good.
word passing because then I
easier
always
for me.
wonder.
Simpler the better,
Yeah, and I always wonder if that person didn't hear on your and they just heard left, so they don't know if I'm going left or if they should move left. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's, if you say passing, then the side that you're passing on, I don't know if that's better, but that's what I've used.
The other thing, if it's like sometimes you'll, on certain parts of it, when you're coming up on a lapped rider, this makes me sound fast. I'm not fast, but it'll be double track or something.
Yep.
Or they'll be going very slow, and there's spots for them to pull over. All from far away, I'm saying coming up or lapped, lappers coming up.
Yeah.
And then they you almost kind of yell it. And it's like 10 seconds out and they can hear you. And people have done it to me too.
Yeah.
Pros will lap me, like, no problem, right? And you can hear them coming.
Yeah.
That's cool to do too, right?
Totally, yeah. And honestly,
they appreciate it, right?
absolutely,
A
right?
warning.
Yeah, one thing that I've done is actually it's called a Nog Oi bell. It's a tiny little KNOG. It's a tiny little bell, but it looks very discreet. And I put that on my bars. And you would never guess that it's a bell. It doesn't look like a bell for those, vain people like me. But that, honestly, it's amazing how positively somebody reacts to the ding of a bell versus I'm coming up on your left. Like, even if you say it kindly, when people hear a bell, they're like, oh, that's great.
It's
and they
hard to be
move
offended.
over. Yeah. Yeah. And that's something that it's really helpful for me. You just have to make sure that you position it away from your dropper post lever, because when you're tired and confused, you'll be hitting your bell and wondering why your saddle isn't going anywhere. So, but yeah, that's happened. So, but yeah, I think that it's totally okay to ask to pass. If there are a bunch of people behind you, you let them by. You don't have to be a jerk to be assertive. That's for sure. So, he added something in too. We should read this. He says,
It's kind of in line with what we were just talking about.
He says, I listened to your most recent podcast and heard the listener question about sitting versus standing all day. I'm a physical therapist and get this question a lot. My answer, the human body does not tolerate prolonged position holding. Almost any one static position, whether sitting, standing, or whatever, has to potentially cause harm. He says, we are designed for movement, so I advise my patients to change position often, sometimes as often as every 15 minutes. A standing desk is great, but standing for 9 hours is not.
Agreed.
Get up often or sit down, sit down often, move around. And then he says, keep up the good work, and thanks for the podcast. He says he'll be looking into Trainer Road for the winter season. Nice, cool. Good to hear.
Yeah, and that kind of ties in with what we were just talking about with recovery rides on the bike.
Yeah.
If you find yourself, because it's a recovery ride, staying in a relatively static position, obviously your legs are moving, but maybe it is as simple as that. You're just holding that same position, whereas if it were an interval workout, you'd be changing position based on the intensity.
Yep, absolutely. Steve's question. He says, hello, Trainer Road. Thanks for the wonderful podcast. I'm a past subscriber who has been lured back into the Trainer Road universe through this podcast. Good, man. He says,
exactly my plan, Steve.
He says, keep up the great work. My question is on water bottle placement that optimizes aerodynamics. I found conflicting information online, and I was surprised that you guys did not mention water bottle placement in your TT article here. And that's on blog.trainerroad.com, where we talked about how to get faster without aero equipment. He says, I'm often plagued with questions such as, is a single bottle on the down tube or seat tube more aero? Or is one large bottle capacity more aero than two smaller capacity bottles? He says, Science and Sport sells a 1,000 milliliter bottle that is huge. I've been using it, but given its large size, I'm trying to be mindful of where I place it. Thanks for all the tips.
Don't use that bottle for aerodynamics.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm way into this stuff.
Yes.
I'm going to, over the years, I'm going to go through kind of what I've seen.
Like it.
So in the olden days, in like 2005 and stuff, there was a lot of that sometimes bikes that they measured would be faster with the bottle on the down tube.
Mm-hmm.
Almost never the seat tube. And then for a while, there were like people had dimpled bottles, and they were even faster. I remember it was like Science and Sport, or not Science and Sport. I forget. It was Rocket something.
Yeah.
I used to always race with that bottle.
Yeah.
As it's gone on, there are certain bikes that they may, like the manufacturer says, they're faster with bottles, and they're designed specifically for bottles. Mm-hmm. They're usually not straight up TT bikes.
They're almost like a fairing that basically closes off more of the negative space inside the front triangle.
Yeah.
Right. So like that little hollow that you have inside the front triangle, they usually fill in a portion of that at the same profile as the existing frame.
I usually see it with a blunted edge on the rear side of the down tube when that happens, but it's not always. Mm-hmm. And then, so I ask this question a lot. I bet you there's a video for the Specialized Wind Tunnel. I should have looked. Mm-hmm. Sorry. But Jim from Aerosports, he says bottle's always slower. Whenever he tests it, it's slower.
Yep.
The only one I'd say that it's not always slower is sometimes they can get like hidden from the wind bottles.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about the Cervelo P4, where it's like they've engineered it so there's a bottle that goes down into the bottom of the triangle.
Yep.
So that fills up some space. But those are usually then UCI illegal when you race.
Yeah.
The good spots to put a bottle are, if you're a triathlete, are between your arms, and that's usually it's going to be farther back behind your elbows because it's kind of trying to close the space off behind your elbows.
Yep.
That's what Jim told us.
Yep.
Or behind the saddle.
Yep.
If you do have to have a bottle on your bike that's not in those two positions, the down tube is better, and an aero bottle is better than a round bottle. Mm-hmm. And I also have this Science and Sport bottle. You guys have seen the liter bottles here?
Big.
Mm-hmm. They are gigantic.
Yeah.
Like that is not the bottle.
They're great for staying hydrated off the bike.
Training,
yeah. And when I do my air quotes triathlon.
Yeah.
I will have probably, actually, I don't know.
You think you'll put them on the back behind the saddle?
I don't think I will, because in a triathlon, triathletes usually carry too much water, like for what you need, and there are so many aid stations. I think I did it. I'll probably do something between the arms bottle that I can get out, or like a profile design, one of those arrow like reservoirs that you can do. I have to look at the latest research on those, but I believe there's actually torpedo ones if you're a triathlete.
Yeah.
It's like a bottle between your arms, but it also has a straw in it.
Is that the Torhans one? I think.
Yeah, Torhans has one. Yeah. Yep. And the thing that you got to just make sure on that is you don't want the straw sticking straight up, because the straw sticking straight up, that alone can be more drag than a bottle.
Yeah, you kind of keep your straw. I remember Liz Lyles used to have her straw actually, like I think with a rubber band or something, actually strapped to the bottle. And then when she would need to, she'd just be able to drop her head down. Her position was such that she could just drop her head down, grab it and kind of lift it up and drink, and then she'd let the straw go with her teeth.
The Specialized Shiv came with a magnet on their straw that you could hook to the handlebars that wasn't strong enough, and whenever you hit a bump, it would dangle down. Oh my God, it was so annoying. And I try to get bigger magnets, but other ones you'll see they'll either have like people will fold the straw back down and like tug it in or something, or have a rubber band or a magnet. That's better. Or some brands will actually put like something you slide onto the straw, and it makes it like arrow. It's like a little fairing.
Airfoil?
Yeah, it's like makes an airfoil.
It's amazing.
I'm guessing those are effective. Yeah, triathletes, man.
That's right.
Awesome. So I guess that's probably all I have to say on this.
On a normal road bike, I think it's always been like Jim was saying with that sort of thing. It's very rare that bottles are going to be faster.
Yeah, unless it's designed for that. I think Cervelo had one like that, and then BMC just came out with one.
It's a bit more integrated.
Yeah,
into the frame.
BMC's Aero road bike is very integrated there.
Yeah, I want to see. It's probably talk to your manufacturer, because it is tough. It's like it's changed over the years. So you could read a study from a few years ago, and depending on when your bike was built, it may apply or may not apply.
Yeah. And the tricky thing too is, like, a lot of people say, well, is it better to take my cages off or keep the cage on? You know what I mean? Like, a cage without a bottle, is that less aerodynamic than no cage at all? And
I would think yes.
Yeah. So. And a lot of people, I think it's been proven that it's not.
This is something to mention too. When I beat you guys in the Merck's time trial, I was taking off my cages. People were like, "Why are you taking off your cages?" I'm like, "Because I want to win, suckers." Like,
and you did.
I did win. It was all. It's just like Chad said, the false attribution.
Yeah.
Like, it's because I took
all because of the cages.
Yeah, all the
100%. Yeah.
Probably was.
So that's. I mean, I guess if you're really looking at aerodynamics, don't use a bottle, or have a frame that allows for a fairing bottle, so to speak.
Yeah, that's the manufacturer specifically says it's faster with the bottle.
Awesome. Cindy says, I listened to all your podcasts and don't think you've answered this one before. I live in the UK and I'm about to start training for my first hill climb season. Yesterday, I rode up a Cat 4 climb, 2 kilometers in length, and I went fairly hard but not all out, and it took 6 minutes. She says, shortly after, my chest started to feel tight, and then I couldn't stop coughing. 24 hours later, I feel as if I have a chest infection with chest tightness and a productive cough. This has happened a number of times on similar occasions, always when climbing, apart from once during a hard effort in a criterium. I completely appreciate that you are not medically trained. I'm glad she says that. She says, but I am a doctor, she says.
And she's asking us?
Yes.
Cindy.
And have wondered whether you have come across this track hack, she calls it, in quotes, or pursuiter's cough, as she calls it. I can't seem to find much in the literature about it, but it sounds like my symptoms fit this. My question is this something riders commonly face? I think all of us kind of nodded our head when we were preparing for this, right?
Oh, yeah.
All of us have experienced it. And then she says, what contributes to it, and how can I reduce the likelihood of this happening, given the negative impact it will have on my training?
Yeah. So Cindy, why I can't say this is indeed your case, because of the fact that 24 hours later you feel like you have a chest infection tells me it's not what I'm about to describe to you. But hopefully this will be useful in any regard, or in other regards. The term, as you probably well know, is exercise-induced bronchoconstriction, not to be confused with exercise-induced asthma. If you're asthmatic and exercise brings on an asthma attack, yep, that's EIA. Otherwise, it's just EIB. You don't have to have asthma to suffer exercise-induced bronchoconstriction. We're just talking about narrowing or inflammation of some sort of the airways. Mm-hmm. And that can happen regardless of whether or not you have asthma. If you do have asthma, well, it's probably going to happen it's highly likely it's going to happen due to your asthma. But that the symptoms, as you describe, shortness of breath and wheezing, there's a decrease in endurance, obviously less oxygen to the muscle, chest tightness, cough, upset stomach, sore throat. So we've all been there. I mean, you push hard, these symptoms manifest. Anyone susceptible. It's typically more severe if you are a diagnosed exercise-induced bronchoconstriction sufferer.
Candidate.
Yeah.
Lucky you.
But typically, and this is why I'm not sure it's what you're describing, is the symptoms, they start pretty soon after the high intensity, 10 or just a few minutes in, and then they subside 10, 15 minutes afterwards, fully resolved 20, 30 minutes afterwards. So the fact that yours are hanging on for so long says it's probably not this. At least maybe something's tagging along. I don't know.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Okay. So as far as why, mouth breathing, first off. So anytime you introduce mouth breathing into and kind of maybe don't remove the nasal passages from the scenario, that you're taking out all the warming that happens and the humidifying that happens before the air actually gets to your lungs. So that's one thing. Hyperventilation, which we do as cyclists. I mean, we ramp our heart rate way up, which means our breathing goes way up along with it. And if we're breathing in cold and or dry air, and it seems to be more attributable to dry air than cold air, although the combination obviously is going to be the double whammy, or simply airborne irritants are what cause it. So it's pretty clear on what you can do to avoid it is try to breathe through your nose. But in high intensity workouts, it's not such a easy get.
Just keep going VO2, but stop breathing with your mouth.
Yeah, but you can do things, and as uncomfortable as it is, and I hate to do it, which is why I'll spend most of my time indoors, is when it's this cold out, is to wrap your face in something, whether it's a balaclava or those little vented devices or a buff. That's all good and fine. I find they get wet and they're just restrictive and they kind of freak me out.
I'm gonna be that guy again. Merino wool.
Yeah, sure.
You
Is
guys,
that good stuff, Jonathan?
It's great. Let me tell you all about it. But no, for the buffs that so actually producer Ian, who's in the room with us, he's also a backcountry skier as well. Chad, you are becoming a backcountry skier.
Yep, I'm on my way.
And it's extremely aerobic, and hard efforts, especially when you're with Ian. He's fast. So when you're going up, uphill, and it's really cold and it's 10 degrees, that sort of thing, I always have a buff over my face like that. And I've found that it, like a lot of the ones like the balaclavas and stuff, they get completely soaked and it just makes it worse. But I've found that once again with merino wool, you don't have that problem. Yep.
Okay, well, it kind of in line with that. So we discussed this question the very same day that I had done an early morning sprints workout. And I attributed my sprinter's cough or pursuiter's cough to the fact that I had gone high intensity. So did a little bit of digging, and I found a pretty recent study by Good et al. That in the Journal of Sports Science, they compared responses of exercise-induced bronchoconstriction between sprint activity and continuous activity. Wow. So they had people do nearly the workout I did, 4 30-second sprints with roughly 5 minutes of separation, and I'm going to assume these were all out. I just read the abstract, didn't dig into the study. And then the other people did 20 minutes at 65% of PPO. Peak power output. So it probably puts them somewhere between 80 and 90% of threshold. And they did that for 20 minutes. Same effects on airway responsiveness. So no changes in ventilation or O2 delivery between the two intensities of exercise. So at least we can rule out the fact that it's not necessarily, or according to this study, it's not at all, whether or not you go high intensity versus moderate intensity for longer duration.
And this is, just say it, talk to your doctor. I know she's a doctor,
always.
but pulmonary doctor. I don't know what kind of doctor you're at. That would be, especially because you said after 24 hours. But I remember, this anecdotally, this happens all the time to me.
Yeah.
I think when we did the Mark Pro Camp, when we did that 20-minute climb, we were all doing that. I was coughing up stuff. Yeah. And this is the bro science, but the guys were like, oh, that just means you went hard. Like, you didn't try hard enough unless you have this kind of like cough.
Yeah. So I have read, and I can't remember how reputable a resource it was, but that we use so much of our lung capacity, but then we push our training a bit further, and we use a little more lung capacity. And this is that new tissue stretching out. Whether or not I have.
No, that's right or not.
Yeah, I do not.
Yeah,
and what I said is bro science, guys. Like, if you know what bro science means, it's what people just say that sounds like right for bros, but that may not be.
Yeah, exactly.
True.
Definitely not pro science.
Yeah, not real science.
So I've experienced this pretty regularly. I always called it VO2 cough, which is apparently a bad name for it, since it's not necessarily tied to intensity.
Not necessarily.
Yeah, and this is something that I've noticed that it usually lasts until I go to bed that evening, and the next day it's usually gone. But if it's like if it's like a race after midday, that's where it would last, until I would go to bed that evening. And I think it's actually extremely common across the board.
Well, yeah, and it is. And I don't even know if people like Chris Froome or Alberto Contador, the people who have been dinged for using salbutamol and clenbuterol, respectively, are even asthma sufferers so much as they have exercise-induced bronchoconstriction of some sort, and they recognize that and they address it beforehand. Probably have to be an asthma sufferer to get a TUE. So
one would hope.
Yeah. I guess.
It's brave new world. So,
and then one thing I didn't mention is the fact that you can tone a lot of this response down or avoid it entirely with a gentler warm-up. So 10 to 15 minutes of easy warm-up seem to be a broad recommendation across these studies.
You can also ask your friends to not attack so hard and have to chase them and crits.
Yeah,
so.
That too. Or just be prepared for it. Warm up.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
I find this is more bro science or anecdotal.
Okay, good.
This is anecdotal, not bro science. But the more of these efforts I have during a season, the less often I get them.
Yes.
It's like that first ride during like the year where I go really hard, I get it. And then by August, it's not happening anymore.
I've noticed the same thing. Have you, Chad? I don't know if you have.
No. But
Chad doesn't even get this. He's just immune.
Oh, no, I get it all the time.
He just goes hard all the time.
I know. He swallows bees and just like keeps pedaling. It's not even hard for him. Jeez. This is impressive. Let's go into Glenn's question. And I think this is going to be the last one that we do here on the podcast. If you're joining us live, stick with us and we can answer the questions that you've been submitting live. Glenn says, the latest podcast highlighted a Nokia scale. As my wife is a nurse, she says this type of scale is junk. Nate, do you want to pull up exactly what model scale that is for the discussion that we'll have on this? He says, please give me some arguments as to why it is not, because I already ordered one, and I would hate to have to use it in secret for the rest of my life. So he adds to this. He says, my wife is an RN. She believes that using electrical impedance to calculate such things as muscle, bone, especially fat mass, is inaccurate at best in a home version. She does not even think that it would be that it would show trends over time due to variables such as hydration, remnants in the digestive system. She believes that the only way to determine body composition is through measurements done by better equipment in the laboratory, and that the scale was a waste of money.
Okay.
So all of us have used different scales.
Let me break. Can I? I'm passionate about this.
First, just admittedly, impedance is an inferior method to the other.
Yeah.
Let me go through these.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Here is the best method: is an autopsy.
Yeah.
Right. That is the best.
Okay.
We're not going to do
You only
that.
get one crack at that.
Yeah.
The next
Can't
one,
really. No trends there.
No redos. Yeah. No trends.
So if you want to prove your wife,
it's a morbid joke. Okay.
next one is DEXA is considered the gold standard, and that's we've done that many times on the podcast. The dual X-ray scan, but that also will be influenced by hydration, contents in your stomach.
We've noticed this.
Yes,
actually.
like and you can fool the test by being like super hydrated because you're being more hydrated muscle will take that as lean mass during the test. So they say to always fast like I think 8 hours before it.
Yeah.
And that's why I was like, you can't drink before, and Chad would drink like coffee before. I'm like, Chad, you can't do that. You're gonna mess up the test.
Yeah.
So we just take that off.
Chad was just getting lean. That's
exactly
all.
getting lean.
Manufacturing leanness.
The other ones that are good will be like a bod pod, or there's the water one, which I'm not completely familiar with.
The bod pod.
I don't know how the water could tell you composition though.
I don't
know how to
either.
tell you body fat.
Let's I don't know about it, so let's just pretend it doesn't exist.
The bod pod just gave an error when Keegan Swenson got into it. He's that lean. It just said error.
Nope.
Yeah. So really though, the DEXA is probably the one that your wife is talking about because of it is considered, like in studies they use DEXAs and stuff. Yeah. So we've gone through, and with the Tanita scale, Tanita has two: the athlete and the
within the scale, 2 modes.
You have 2 modes: athlete and regular person mode. And we have found that the regular person mode tracked very well for us 3 to our DEXA results, and that the athlete mode tracked very well to fat caliper results.
And for those that are asking, there are a number of different Tanita scales, but one that I've used with this and I've been able to validate is the Tanita BF680W. Is one that I've been using at home, and it works great for that.
And the Nokia scale is the Nokia Body Cardio.
Okay, cool.
So what will happen is on these electrical impedance scales is you step on them and they'll say something. And from day to day, because your hydration changes, and she's right, the contents in your stomach and the intestines changes, your body fat will be like, it'll say you've gained or lost like 2 pounds of body fat within a day. And even in that same day, you drink a whole bunch of water and you get on it and it's going to say it's different. But so because I'm thinking, one test we have to do is make sure the Nokia lines up with the Tanita, because, and I'll take that action item. But if those line up, at least for us, if they line up very closely to the DEXA, like we've lost body fat on the Tanita scale and we've lost body fat on the DEXA, and it's been the same rate of body fat.
Yes.
The nice thing about the Nokia, what it does is it puts it to your phone, and those little changes each day that happen, so it might say 16.1 one day, then 16.5, then 15.9, then 16.5. As long as I'm doing it first thing in the morning, so I'm fasted, and I go to the bathroom before it, so it's the same each time, is that it has on the app like a little trend line. And I can see, and we'll say for the month of August, you gained or lost, 1 pound on average over that month. And that's what I'm interested in, right? Is that trend and seeing that trend line go down.
Yeah.
So
I think weekly would be even more useful. Just monitoring it on a weekly basis.
I've looked at, I looked back at the data that we had, and then I have all the printouts of all of my DEXA scans, and the Tanita scale was always within 0.2% from the rest.
That carried for all three of us.
All three of us.
All of our DEXAs, all of our self caliper measurements,
Yep.
And then all of the
I
daily
think
Tanita measurements.
I think 7 different measurements that we took for DEXAs,
We were
all of them
pretty
across the
thorough.
board.
And this is a N=3 study, right? So we can't say this is for everybody. But how we did it too is we got on the Tanitas in the morning, and then we, without eating or drinking anything, we went directly to
post-void.
the diagnostic center to get the scan done. And then we would also do a caliper test at the same time, following the same protocol every time. And it was amazing to see how closely they tracked. The DEXA gave you a ton more information, but if you're just interested in driving your composition in a specific direction, then you get all that you need.
Supplementing your DEXA measurements, because you can't do a DEXA every day. You can't even do it every week, really. I wouldn't.
Exactly. It's for us. We're lucky. We don't need a doctor's note to do it. You can just go and do it. It's $50. I really hope that prove your Glenn. This isn't great marital suggestions, but go get DEXAs every quarter. Right. And if you can, depending where you live, and then see if that tracks well with your scale. But this is our experience. Have your wife listen to you. Glenn's wife, I love you. Glad you're trying to look out for Glenn.
Glenn's wife, I was exactly the same. I was like, these things are like what you go to at truck stops, and you drop a quarter in there, and it gives you some funny number. Like I did not think that they worked.
Well, that's why we did this, right? That's why we checked it. Yeah.
And I've been very impressed by it. So there is a gold standard for sure. But that doesn't mean that you can't glean useful data that actually parallels very closely to it. So,
and as far as weight,
it's hugely helpful for me. I'm counting my macros right now, and I'm doing all of that to try to get down to race weight and to try to find the ideal supplementation plan for my training, right? And it's been hugely helpful for me to just see, basically it's been over just 3 weeks now, but to see over 3 weeks to see already, the trend analysis backing up what I'm doing with nutrition.
As far as just pure weight, I haven't done this with the Nokia scale, but with the Tanita scale, we have a certified 25 kilogram weight to 2 grams. I put that on the Tanita scale, and it said exactly 25 kilograms. It was exactly right. So as far as weight, I trust it, but that's a lot easier to do than body composition.
Right.
And two, when there could be, what I'm looking for on these scales is precise results, not accurate. So kind of the same thing each time.
Can you describe what the difference there?
Accurate meaning like the true right number, and precise meaning the same type of measurement each time.
It's repeatable.
And, exactly. And so if I get on the scale 2 times in a row, the same reading should come out. Because what I want to do is over time to see those numbers go down. And you have to, in these scales, you put in your age and your height, and that it takes from like a table of average ranges of things for people, and I'm not an average body size for my height.
And it still works though.
Well, yeah, but maybe it would be even better for somebody else. What I'm just saying is, I'm looking at the trend, not I'm not taking the data like this is exactly it. I take the DEXA as that's my it. But even the DEXA has a pretty big range of error if you look it up on the internet.
Yeah. And I think it goes without saying that you don't have socks and don't have clothes on, period. I even take my watch off. I don't have anything on to try to make sure that I don't have any distraction with it too. So, and I just measure at the same time every day, same circumstances. So those things can help. Cool. I guess that covers it for the live or for the podcast here. If you're with us live, stick with us. Stay tuned for that special episode next week, and check out the Ask a Cycling Coach podcast Facebook group for that special announcement, in terms of the special guest, I should say, for the live podcast that we'll be doing from Interbike next week. Thanks for joining us. If you want to learn more about Trainer Road, we got some exciting things coming down the pipe. Please check it out at trainerroad.com. If you want to submit your question to the podcast, you can do so at trainerroad.com/podcast. We'll talk to you all next week. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye. Hey, it looks like I'm not too loud.
Hey.
Okay. Or too quiet.
Good. It's Nate's just... He's just more excited than Chad and I guess. He's very...
Exuberant.
Exuberant. Yeah, great way to say it. I'm going to take YouTube if you want to take Facebook, Nate. Sound like a plan?
Well, yeah.
Okay.
Jared says, Nate, don't screw up your wife's event with something easily avoidable like headset bolts or going off course. You'll never hear the end of it. She'll probably just run it no matter what, because that could really have...
Yeah,
I just have to get to the run start.
Right.
I'll bring extra bolts. I'll just bring multi-tool.
Let's just make sure they're torqued down right. Okay, let's see. People wondering if we're going to have coffee or water this morning. Life's questions need answers.
Somebody said that this looks like I always drink milk.
Yeah.
Plot twist, it is milk.
Mm-hmm.
Whole milk every morning. Just kidding. It's coffee.
Okay, man, there's a lot of just
Black tea.
There's a lot of good discussion in here. So I'm trying to find.
Jay asks, hey guys, in a recent podcast, you guys talked about the benefits of doing some VO2 max work throughout the year, even a base phase. My question is how to incorporate some. I believe our base sweet spot base plans do incorporate some VO2 max work in it.
During the second stretch,
Yeah.
the second 6 weeks. I don't try to weave it in there too early, just because. Basically, because the initial 6 weeks of that plan have been tried and true over 6 seasons of training people indoors, and they just work. So I figure if it's not broke,
Don't
fix it. But the second 6 weeks for sure, after we've got a month and a half of consistency and address muscle endurance and aerobic endurance, et cetera, then we absolutely move on to the VO2 max. Not to say you can't weave it in even sooner. I just, from this coach's perspective, I think 6 weeks of something a bit more basic before we hit you with the hard stuff makes sense to me.
Luke says, I've been too busy to find time for my 3 to 4 hour zone 2 ride the past 2 weeks. So how comparable is doing a 1 hour round trip zone 2 commute 3 times a week? Love the podcast. So basically taking his 3 to 4 hour ride and splitting it up into 3 to 4
Yeah, the only thing you miss when you break those rides up into shorter rides is the fatigue that you would reach over a multi-hour ride. So we're trying to cook the slow twitch fibers, and that's a process. You can facilitate that process a little bit by going into it starved, which is why those depleted rides that we've talked about a number of times. If you can get the more depleted a state you can reach prior to the ride, the more of the benefit, the depleted benefit you'll get, the more supposedly or for all intents and purposes fatigued the fibers are going into it, the better the effect with those shorter rides.
Yeah.
So you're just trying to circumvent, basically, try to advance yourself to the latter hours of those multi-hour rides.
Yeah.
So if you can do that with shorter rides via different means, the starved or the depleted rides, for instance, that's one way of going about it. But the fatigue that you're trying to achieve with the longer rides doesn't necessarily happen with those shorter rides, especially if you're eating.
The nice part about partnering, if you're willing to do the starved rides going in like that sort of thing, is if these are commutes, you don't have any necessary, you don't have specific goals or anything else that, that lack
honestly,
of feeling could impede.
If you're doing these on the way to work and you just bypass breakfast in the morning, I think you'll probably get a pretty good bang for that buck. I think it's a pretty great alternative. I can't compare it apples to apples, but I think you'll probably still derive some aerobic adaptation as a consequence.
Somebody talked about Chris Hoy having super narrow bars. Someone said he rides at 36 on his road bike and doesn't seem to affect his ability.
Chris Hoy seems to be
Not so
okay.
much.
Yeah.
So Sir Chris Hoy.
Yeah.
Knighted
Exactly.
because he's so good at riding a bike.
Exactly. Phil says, I'm sick with the flu. How long should I wait before I get back into training? And should I take it easy for the first week or so? It really, you have to pay attention to the body and favor a conservative approach, I think, is an important thing to do when you're coming back from something like this.
Yeah, your body's reeling from, excuse me, a different type of insult, not a training insult, but an illness, which is effectively just like overtraining. You've put yourself in a impaired state. So you have to work your way back from that, and you can't expect to just dive right back into training as though it never happened. The body's still repairing itself.
Yep. Nathan says, don't know if you'll pick this up, but, sorry, not you, Nate. He says, because of Trainer Road, he says, thanks to Trainer Road, I've qualified for Kona in 2019.
Nice.
Ooh, nice job, Nathan. You're fast, man. He says, can't thank you enough. He says, roll on the next 57 weeks of training. It's a long time, man. Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to be at Kona.
Yeah.
And we probably should have mentioned this. We're going to have some rides. We don't know what.
Yeah.
We do know. Jonathan's given me the maps. I have to put them together into a plan.
Yeah.
So we kind of,
we don't know entirely yet.
We don't know the date and everything. We have the idea.
Yeah, we don't know.
We'll have it all for y'all soon. So.
I've scheduled in our new upcoming calendar app 2 hours a day.
Calendar feature set,
Calendar features,
it's not a separate app.
It's not an app, Calendar feature. About 2 hours running a day so I'm guessing we'll have some a little bit longer.
Some days will be longer. Some days will be shorter.
Maybe all long. I don't know.
Yeah.
So I thought
we have so many choices.
Here's what I'd like, Chad.
Okay.
I want the type of intensity in riding where I feel a little bit good about eating more that day, and at night I can have 2 beers with dinner, and I wake up the next day and I'm not dreading the ride we're going to do.
Yeah, that's exactly what is coming
cool.
up.
That's the right balance. The 2 beer ride.
Yep.
Some of the routes that I gave you will not fall within those parameters.
Well, and my 2 beers will be
fine,
like 4.5%, and yours will be like 9.1%.
I think we'll probably end up repeating one of the routes a couple times.
Okay. That's fine.
Because it's kind of hard at Kona to find something that isn't like
it's a bit small.
Yeah, and you have like either Pan Flat on the Queen K, which that isn't a whole lot of fun.
There's nothing about the Queen K that's fun.
Right, or you have climbing up volcanoes, but there's some happy medium. So
you're saying that they're going to be longer or shorter?
No, I think that we'll have maybe 1 or 2 days that's longer, but the rest of them are going to be.
Okay.
We can keep them short.
We can do it. We can do long too. Just not intense then.
Yeah, exactly.
Not intense, right, Chad?
Yeah, no. I'm not doing any intensity.
Somebody says this calendar's amazing. And then Tom calls me out for saying I'm not tall. I'm sorry, Tom. Please forgive me for saying that.
Did you say you're tall?
Yes. Yeah. So he says,
recorded.
Yeah, it's on the record. Somebody is offering if Chad wants to ride the bike at Ironman Santa Rosa that he will run and swim. So
Chad wants to race me.
That's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Just the bike. I don't have to learn to swim.
Exactly.
Or you could do the run too.
Yeah, maybe by then. Why not?
Just need to find a swim.
I wouldn't want to do both. I would like to do what you're going to do. Leave it all out there as far as the bike goes.
2 for cyclists who. It's been a while since I've looked at prices for triathlons. My goodness, like the first tier price, which is the lowest for the relay, it's like $405.
Oh.
Yeah, and then I looked for the Ironman, and I think it goes up to like $700 to $800 depending on when you sign up for a race. And I know someone locally, they didn't like $30 for a cross race. And I know it's a little shorter, but still, like triathlon is so expensive, and everything you have to buy all the bike equipment, then all the run stuff, and then all the swim stuff. It's tough.
And travel.
And travel too, because usually. They're not as frequent as like road races.
Okay, we've answered this one before, but what's your opinion on gaining weight as muscle mass through weight training or flat time trials? So gaining muscle mass through weight training for flat time.
Unless it vastly impacts your frontal area, I'm all about it. So I like the idea of really all you have to do is stir up the speed once, maybe twice on a turnaround course. And then once that's rolling, that mass kind of works for you. So not to mention it's usable mass. It's mass that actually contributes to the work you're doing. Even if it's upper body, if it keeps you steadier in the wind, if it keeps you more comfortable on your bike so that you're not shifting around and interrupting the airflow, et cetera. It's hard for me to come up with reasons why not.
Yep. Yeah, I agree with that. Wholeheartedly. Jamie says, would riding only in zone 2 about 20 hours per week raise your average speed, or would you need to incorporate some higher intensity efforts, and how much intensity? Oh, that'd be a 20 hours per week in zone 2.
It's a way to do it, and that's how you have to do it if you're just going to do low intensity. Just ride a lot, and 20 hours. Especially if you're only accustomed to 8 or 10 hours a week, and then you go and double that. But even if you're accustomed to 15, nudging up to 20, and I mean that's going to put you on the bike 5-6 days a week for 3 or 4 hours at a time. Yeah, that's absolutely going to spur some aerobic adaptation, which is just going to take your base level of fitness and creep it up.
Yep. I think there's a better way to skin that cat for most folks with having
if you've got the time
intensity.
and the interest, it's one way to do it.
20 is hard.
I'd
You know what would be the
prefer to
best?
Spend less.
20 on the trainer where you don't stop pedaling. Like you don't do any bathroom breaks.
That'd be like 30 hours of outdoor work.
Yeah, exactly. Just straight.
Yeah, you'd be a beast.
You'd be a beast, yeah. At least you'd be in the position to be a future beast.
Mm-hmm.
Because you probably wouldn't have much snap, right?
It's a broad base. You probably wouldn't have any. I don't know why you would unless you're genetically predisposed.
Yeah.
Patrick asks, for your ramp test, as cadence decreases, is there a point at which you should stop, or is the test valid as long as the pedals are turning? My friend held 30 RPM for the last 15 seconds in erg mode. So I'd argue that, really it's you go until exhaustion is the point of the ramp test. So until you can't turn your pedals anymore.
It doesn't really matter because the power's not going to be there at 30 RPM. So as soon as the power falls off and we're trying to capture your best 1 minute, it's not going to be part of that 30 to 50 RPM slog.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. Somebody says merino wool is the truth. Nice. Cool. I'm not alone.
If you put merino, I put merino wool on and it just itches me.
That's right. You have an allergy.
Itch.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty new to the whole merino wool game, but so
Are
far
you?
so good. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's really good, man.
Is
In
it?
fact, you're wearing a shirt made of it right now.
Am I?
I'd argue. Yeah, I assume.
It's very soft.
Yeah. Okay, let's just do a couple more. We had a few questions about like our thoughts on they're basically like it's a power meter that's on Indiegogo or Kickstarter. We see a lot of them, and honestly, go to DC Rainmaker and check that stuff out because he's the authority on that sort of stuff. And I know that he usually warns folks against, like this, just because he knows from working with lots of companies, talking to them, how difficult it is to make a good power meter.
It's
way tougher than it seems.
I haven't followed him recently, but I used to follow every single power meter.
Mm-hmm.
And part of the growth of Trainer Road is I was planning on having power meter prices come down, which they did.
Yeah.
But so I was really interested in a new one, especially when people said this is going to be so much cheaper.
Yeah.
What I found is everyone is more expensive than they initially thought, and no one hits the date line by it's crazy.
A year or two?
I would say like at least 2 years.
Yeah.
They get like 90% there or 95, but then they need to get to that like 98.5% accuracy, and that takes the rest of the time. Some people like Brin Brothers, that took them like 6 years,
and they didn't.
They kind of launched and then nothing. Then they went away. It's just so hard. The Ashton, where they were going to put one. It was going to be like a battery size in your bottom bracket.
Yeah.
They went to like MIT. They told me Interbike 1 year. No, we got it. Next year we're going to launch.
Yeah.
I think they went away too.
I think it's something that I know Specialized has dedicated a huge amount of resources to developing different calibration processes, because I think it's like a power meter. It isn't expensive in terms of the parts, and it isn't hard to produce, and you can buy strain gauges, right? You can buy accelerometers, but where it's really expensive is in the labor of how all of that stuff is actually assembled and put together and calibrated. That's where it gets, that's where the art is.
Well, that's why it's not just really cheap.
Yep.
It's because of that, and usually because it's tied to a different component like a crank or something or a wheel, and you have to buy that too.
Yep.
Garmin bought Metri Gear, I think that's what they were called, which are the Garmin Vectors, and it took them, I believe, 2 to 3 years to get those pedals right after
with Garmin's resoursoves.
Yep, and that's after there was, quote, a product. They had the product at Interbike and they were showing it. Garmin bought them, and then in the bike industry, who has more resources than Garmin? They're one of the biggest, right?
Totally.
And it still took that long.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's more complex than we think.
Yeah, I don't want to do it. Hardware sounds scary.
Yeah, it's easy to armchair quarterback power meter stuff. You know what I mean?
I still think I think though that there is probably a design out there that is significantly less money than all the other designs, just hasn't been found yet or hasn't been perfected yet.
Yep.
And that would be amazing. That's what I hope, at least.
Yeah, at some point.
It keeps going down. All the prices keep going down. They keep getting better at it incrementally.
Yep. Okay. I'm going to just refer. Griffin says, under what conditions can you skip a base phase? I know it's been answered before, but after listening to all the podcasts, I'm forgetting which one. Griffin, you can actually go, there's a blog post that's written, can I skip base training, I believe. So go to blog.trainerroad.com and you can check that one out. And that's probably a better way than answering here right now. So,
if you type in those exact words, we're the first result on Google.
Hey, there we go. Give it a goog, as they say. So thanks for joining us, everybody. This is going to be next week's podcast. It's going to be on Tuesday, remember. So you'll want to be joining us live, and that's going to be 7:30 p.m. Pacific. If you are in the remote region of Reno, Tahoe, Sacramento, or anything else like that, you should come over for this live podcast. It's going to be a ton of fun. So join us for that. That's going to be at 7:30 p.m. Pacific at our headquarters. If you need our address, just shoot a message to support@trainerroad.com, and they'll be able to give you all the information on that. It's going to be a good party.
We're also doing Stetna's
That's right.
ride on Sunday, chat night.
Sierra Prospect.
Yep.
Yes, and if you're going to be up at the Free Ride Festival or outdoor demo,
Yep.
All day Monday, we're going to be up there ripping our mountain bikes. Look for
Ripping.
Nate and I are gonna look like kind of like twins. I just realized we have like the same helmet, and we'll have POC knee pads.
Mine has white on. Yours has black on the POC helmet.
Oh yeah.
Like I have so that's how you can
You
tell
have
us.
white on yours?
No, it just says POC is in white.
That's
So
true.
that's how you'll be able to tell us apart.
Yes, there you go.
only
Yeah,
way.
not the height difference or anything. Yeah. But come find us up there. That'll be tons of fun. And if you're dropping into the region and you want to stop by the office, just once again support@trainerroad.com and then drop them a line, and then we can get you set up. So thanks everybody. We'll talk to you all next week.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.